What's up, guys? It's been a while since we've been able to do a live like this. I hope the connection's good and everything like that. Hoping for some people to come on and give us some questions there, but we can talk about some of these things that were in the story questions today, and we answered them in the story, but 15 seconds is really, it's very limited, right? So if anybody who's joining, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in here and we will answer them. I would prefer to focus on these questions than the ones that are already here. But the first question here, tinnitus is said to be permanent damage. How can I stop the ringing? Well, a lot of things are said to be permanent, mainly I think just because medical treatment is usually focused on managing problems, on managing symptoms, and not really on actually getting a cure, right? So it's easy for them to say that this is permanent, and they say this with all kinds of things, and it's just not true. The body has a remarkable ability to heal itself, and when you give it what it needs and you stay out of its way, then the problem goes away, right? Tinnitus is a pinching of one of the cranial nerves due to an osteoporosis of the skull, and this is going to come up more and more and more because it's becoming more and more common, because these deficiencies already existed, they were already a problem, and now they're just getting worse, right? And there's multiple things that we do to contribute to that, and these mineral deficiencies, right, they're the same ones that are involved in osteoporosis anywhere else. We're calling it osteoporosis of the skull. Most people just don't know, don't make the connection between tinnitus, vertigo, or sometimes migraine headaches, and a whole list of other things that can be caused by pinching those nerves in the skull. And this also goes for other things too, like atrial fibrillation, by the way, with the irregular heartbeat. This is due to a pinching of a nerve in the back. It's actually a back problem, right? It's not a heart problem, it's a back problem, because that nerve shoots through the spine, and the osteoporosis essentially of the spine and the degeneration of the cushioning, the connective tissue cushioning between the discs degenerates, pinches the nerve, and you get that problem. It can also actually go with other problems as well, bladder problems, right? These nerves are connected through the spine, and the osteoporosis involved pinching these nerves can cause you to have an overactive bladder, right? The next question here is, can you make a video about acne? It's very easy for us to say, yeah, it's a digestive problem, it's a blood sugar problem. And I heard these things a bunch of times too before I really understood what that actually means practically, and like what you actually have to do about it, right? Like saying acne is a digestive problem doesn't help you that much if you don't know how to correct the digestion. So it does start with salt, right? I always start with salt because it's more or less the first stage. The first stage really is the mouth, not just the chewing, but the salivary stuff that your body produces to help break down food at the beginning stage, and there's chemical reactions involved there as well, and some things can be absorbed directly in the mouth, especially minerals, colloidal minerals. Then it goes down into the stomach, and that's really where a lot of the action happens. And if the person has a lack of salt and or calcium, by the way, lack of salt and or calcium, they're not going to be producing adequate hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and that's one of the main components of the stomach acid. There's other gastric juices involved here as well, but once the body starts to fail at these critical levels, especially if the stomach's not acidic enough, not going to be absorbing a lot of these components that are going to be involved in the production of gastric juices. And there is a range of them, right? So cleaning up the digestion, using lots of salt, avoiding the glutens that are going to be screwing up the intestines. A lot of people, especially in America, are having problems with dairy as well, especially grain-fed dairy, gluten-fed dairy, right? So that those problem proteins are showing up in the milk, some of the cheeses, sour cream, whatever, and it is affecting the digestive tract as well. And if the inside of the intestine is like a shag carpet inverted, right? There's all these little finger-like villi and microvilli to expand the surface area, because that area is where nutrients are absorbed, right? They're absorbed in through the villi. Actually, if there's damage to the intestine and there's little holes in there, then you actually get the whole proteins going in through those holes instead of through the villi. This is how you get dirty blood, right? You get and leaky gut. This is leaky gut. You get undigested proteins going into the blood because they're not going through the villi, because the villi are damaged. So the dirty blood thing is going to have a lot to do with this acne as well. This toxicity in the blood. These are toxic deposits. Essentially, this is going to go for cysts as well, right? Circulation is involved here as well. When you have a digestive problem, now you start to have a circulation problem almost by default, right? So you've got dirty blood circulating around, and if there's a circulation problem on top of that, now you got stagnant dirty blood traveling around. So this shows up on the skin very quickly, very easily. For lots of people, blood sugar has a ton to do with it. For me, blood sugar has a ton to do with it. Vitamin D can have a ton to do with it too, by the way. It's obviously, it's one of the 90 essential nutrients, but definitely I start to notice it because in the winter I do supplement with vitamin D, and there's a period where you're like, I don't know if I should start yet. And you can see it in your skin. I can feel it in my skin. You know, it's my first sign that I need to start supplementing with vitamin D. It's getting too late in the season, you know. And this can have a lot to do with it. Remember, vitamin D is one of the 4 fat-soluble vitamins. D, E, A, and K are the fat-soluble vitamins. You can think of it as DEEK. And vitamin D is one of those. And when we say there's a skin problem, we're saying this is a good fat problem. And this is not just the omegas and the cholesterol, it's also the fat-soluble vitamins. And vitamin D can be critical there in the skin, more so than vitamin K. But you also hear vitamin A and E as well having a lot to do with the skin. A lot of creams and stuff are based on these molecules as well. So taking all this into consideration, getting rid of the glutens, making sure you're taking enough of the good fats, right? Supplementing and food, and we're recommending eggs for this reason because it has a range. It has all the good fats that you need, and it has cholesterol as well. So that alone is usually enough for most people to clear up whatever acne problem they have or skin problem that they have. This is also going to go for the other, you know, maybe they classify it as more serious, but I've seen acne that's really, really serious. But dermatitis and eczema and these types of things, this is, again, based in the digestion, based in the dirty blood, you know, caused by the digestive problem, and fat deficiencies of good fats, as well as some minerals too, guys. And we mentioned the vitamins, but some minerals like zinc and selenium as well are going to have, you know, a huge role in the skin, and we actually need quite a lot of zinc, for instance. This could be another thing, right? When we just go through the checklist, usually we recommend a starter pack of products anyways. It's going to contain all these things. You're not going to have to worry about it. But if someone, say, you know, was just on a basic supplement protocol and they were still having problems with their acne, our go-tos would be increasing the omegas, especially the omega-3, increasing the zinc, and possibly increasing the vitamin D as well, depending on where they live. Wife's gyno liked the 90 for Life products except for Tangy Tangerine 2.0, claiming it had too much vitamin A. How can that pose an issue? Well, too much of anything can pose an issue, but for all the ingredients in that one product, and there's quite a lot of ingredients in that one product, vitamin A would be probably the least of my concerns. I wouldn't really be concerned about vitamin A at all, actually, in almost any case. I've never seen any type of problem with taking too much vitamin A, personally. There's other vitamins that can cause problems, but not vitamin A. I mean, I'm sure you can, it's just the doses involved, they're not there to worry about, in my opinion. They're not strong enough. The question here is, do you use just a pinch of salt during a 2-day water fast? And this is really important because we talk a lot about salt, right? You need salt to make the stomach acid. You need salt for other reasons as well. You need sodium as well, but the chloride in the salt, you need that for strong stomach acid. You need that to digest food and to absorb nutrients, especially minerals. And having said that, the electrolyte component of salt, you know, this really differs between person to person. It depends on how big you are, it depends on how old you are, you know. By the way, a lot of things get diagnosed in puberty because people are in a growth spurt, and that changes their nutrient needs at that time, right? You need more nutrients to grow than you do to maintain. So there's many things that can impact how much salt you need, and the amount of salt you need today will probably differ from tomorrow, unless you do the exact same thing every day. But it changes a lot based on your level of activity, right? There's many things that can dehydrate you. You have 1 extra cup of coffee, now you need more salt because it dehydrates you, and salt is critical in actual hydration. So when this person asks, do I do just a pinch, or you can't give a quantity, because quantity depends on you, what you need today, and you have to be able to gauge that. I think it's one of the keys to good health, is being able to gauge your salt needs specifically to the minute, to the hour. You should learn this by doing it, and learn the sense that I need more salt right now. You just get this message in your head, I need more salt, and put a little bit more in your water or whatever, right? What do you recommend for optimal thyroid health? Not much more than the 90 essential nutrients, truthfully. Now, most people know, even medical doctors know, that iodine is involved in thyroid health, but that's only one of the essential nutrients, and it's only one of the nutrients involved in thyroid. One of the other more important ones is selenium, and its direct cofactor, copper. And selenium deficiency and copper deficiency are going to cause big problems in the body as well, regardless, of the thyroid, but it has a ton to do with the thyroid health. You can give the thyroid iodine, all you want. It might not be the most major deficiency involved, and it usually doesn't get rid of the problem. It manages the problem like most other treatments out there in the marketplace. So selenium and copper and iodine, these are all part of the 90 essential nutrients. Each one of them have multiple cofactors themselves, so that's the most important thing. Now, if you have a overactive thyroid, hyperthyroid, then you do want to be eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables as well, because they will actually down regulate the action of the thyroid. If you have low thyroid, then you do not want to be eating the cruciferous vegetables. Actually, Ben Fuchs on this point, he's going to be saying just eat cruciferous vegetables because they're great anyways, but it is a general standard advice for people with hypothyroidism to avoid the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts and the cauliflower, the cruciferous vegetables. There's also, for thyroid health, sea greens, sea moss, kelp, and anything that really actually is grown in the sea and is a plant, especially if it's dried, concentrated, it's going to have a large effect on the thyroid. And it's actually one of the additional products that Dr. Wallach would recommend on top of the 90 essential nutrients, and of course on top of avoiding the bad foods for all the reasons of getting in the way of absorption of these nutrients, and screwing up the body in other ways, right? If you're eating the bad foods, causing more stress on the body, now your body needs more nutrients to fix all that, right? It needs more good stuff because now you need to repair things, and you need more to repair than you do to maintain. Thyroid health, not that much specific. 90 essential nutrients, avoid the bad foods. You don't need the emphasis on like eggs and good fats and stuff that we normally give to a lot of problems, but the one thing that I would focus on is the cruciferous vegetables if it's hyper, and the sea greens. In any case, you take the sea greens. Dandruff and dry scalp issues, what's the case? So again, it's going to start in digestion. All skin problems are going to start in digestion, right? There's, again, on the textbook, it's caused by deficiencies. What are those deficiencies caused by? They're usually caused by a digestive problem, right? The good fats actually are something that we can get in our food supply. Not everybody has acne, not everybody has dandruff, right? If you're absorbing these fats that are in the food supply, you will not have these problems. There is many diets that are deficient in these compounds, especially veganism is quite low on the omega-3s, and obviously there's no cholesterol, there's no plant-based cholesterol, right? So they're avoiding that as well. And you do see a lot of these problems in vegans. So dandruff and dry scalp, clean up the digestion means you're taking enough salt, you're avoiding the glutens, possibly digestive enzymes, by the way, could help. I forgot to mention that for any of the other skin problems as well, because digestive enzymes can aid in the absorption of these nutrients in the stomach and in the intestine. A good digestive enzyme is going to have something with chloride in it, probably betaine hydrochloride usually. Could have salt directly in it, but a great digestive enzyme is going to have bile in it. Ox bile is kind of the most common on the market, and it works extremely well, right? So then this is because your liver, a healthy liver, which needs a lot of minerals and nutrients, by the way, selenium be the most important one there. The liver produces the bile. Bile goes into the gallbladder secretes it into the intestine. And when the bile meets the foods, especially the fats, it actually has enzymes in it that allow you to absorb and utilize those fats, right? So it's critical. And if any of these things have been screwed up for long term, your liver probably is under function, right? The gallbladder might have stones in it. And this will impact, like you could digest the food from your mouth, stomach, you could have enough acid, that's fine, breaks it down, goes into the intestine. Now there's not enough bile to meet it there. You're not going to be absorbing those fats. You're not going to be utilizing those fats, right? This deficiency is going to contribute to the dry skin, brittle nails, right? Hair problems, all kinds of soft tissue problems, right? Eyes are soft tissue, heart's soft tissue, right? Lungs are soft tissue, brain's soft tissue, and they're all made essentially of the same stuff in different ratios. But this digestive problem is going to contribute to the heart of it usually. Any advice for having a stronger stomach other than salt? The only other thing is going further, with, again, digestive enzymes before meals can make your stomach stronger. But it's quite easy to reset the stomach. The hardest things that we deal with are people who have been on antacids or proton pump inhibitors for a long time, and this inhibits their body's ability to produce stomach acid, so it takes quite a bit longer to reset it with them, and we do a lot of salt flushes with them. That's why we instruct people when they're doing the salt flush to repeat it if it was easy to do. Basically, if they could drink a whole bunch of salt, like some people can take 4 or 5 sips and they're like, oh, I'm done. But if you can drink the whole glass, you need to continue doing that. And we find that a lot with people who have been on antacids and proton pump inhibitors, stomach acid lowering drugs, that they need to do that quite a few times. And often they need to wean off of those drugs, not for any withdrawal reasons, just mainly for psychological reasons. You stop using that drug right away, you could actually go through some serious digestive distress, and people often don't want to ride that out, so they'll cut their dose in half or something like that. And it's a strange hump for us to have to overcome, because the body should work properly, quite easily actually, especially with the salt component. That should not be a big problem. The other thing is avoiding carbonated drinks completely. Don't screw around with carbonated drinks at all, because carbonated drinks lower the stomach acid. Oh, someone just said here, girlfriend's on proton pump inhibitors to prevent pains in the chest area from inflammation causing foods. Even though she's been following a super strict diet, she is unable to get off the medicine. So the doctors say this, there are certain foods, spicy foods and whatever. People come to us and they say, I avoid this list of food because I have heartburn, right? And it's usually actually quite a different list of food, different things throw different people off. And it's because everybody digests different and reacts differently to different proteins. None of this really matters, because our job is just to acidify the stomach, and it's actually quite easy. The body takes hydrochloric acid, and if it does have enough calcium, let's go into that because we mentioned that earlier. Calcium is involved in every muscle constriction in the body. Calcium for constriction, magnesium for relaxation. This is why calcium and magnesium are the 2 most important nutrients involved in blood pressure problems as well, because the blood pressure is governed by the action of the muscles in the veins pushing the blood around, and the muscles in the heart pushing the blood around. So if there's not enough calcium in the body, one of the things that the body can do is take calcium away, because it needs to maintain its calcium levels in the blood, just like all its nutrients in the blood. And if it's low, it's playing musical chairs with these nutrients. One of the places that it could take nutrients away from are the chief cells, which are the cells that squirt out the stomach acid into the stomach. So you could be using enough salt, and if you don't have enough calcium, one of the things that could be failing is the body's ability to actually get that hydrochloric acid into the stomach. What could also happen is there's another muscle on the top of the stomach, again governed by calcium in its constriction, magnesium in its relaxation, and if it's taken away from that muscle, the sphincter on there that connects the esophagus with the stomach, now you're going to be able to have acid splash up into the esophagus. This is heartburn. This is reflux, right? And by the way, if it was your actual stomach acid the way it's supposed to be, if it went up into the esophagus, it would burn through the esophagus. Right? Your stomach acid should be strong enough to digest meat down to the bone. You can bite your finger off and digest the entire thing. That means it will eat through the esophagus as well. This is why the stomach has a stomach lining, so that it can tolerate that level of acidity. If your stomach is not acidic enough, then there's stuff in the stomach that is not being digested correctly by default. You're getting things living. You're getting bugs living in the bacteria, fungus, mold living in the stomach, fermenting in the stomach, and they release gases, and they cause gas to go up. This is what could also spark the esophagus opening up, is a gas coming up. It's opening up to let the gas from the bacteria that are fermenting in the stomach, because bacteria can't live in a strong acidic environment, right? The stomach is supposed to be sterile, and when it has enough stomach acid, it is sterile. And if it's not, again, you got things living in it, and they produce gases and waste and that type of stuff. When the body opens up to burp it out, you could get some stomach acid, weak stomach acid, up with that, and that's what burns the esophagus. But it doesn't burn through it because it's not acidic enough. The rest of this question, even though she's been following a super strict diet, no idea what that means, right? You could eat whatever you want. If there's not enough salt on it, it's not going to matter. Unless you're only eating, fruits and vegetables. Most of them have enzymes in them, or they're pre-digested, and you could digest a lot of fruits a lot easier than meat, for instance, right? So we don't ever really know what a strict diet means. People come to us all the time and they say, I eat well, or I eat clean, or don't know what that means, really. So the proton pump inhibitors are there to lower the stomach acid. Our MO is to increase the stomach acid by any means necessary. Salt first and foremost, digestive enzymes secondarily, avoiding the other things like carbonated drinks, right? So correcting those underlying problems. You don't need to be on proton pump inhibitors. For beginners, do you recommend mineral testing via hair analysis, for example? Truthfully, it depends on your pockets, right? If you have the money to get a hair analysis, I've seen lots of people like this. Look, I just want to get the test. I'm gonna get the products anyways. I just want to make sure. Fine, right? It's gonna be probably $100, $200, maybe $300, depending on where you are. Now, me personally, as a salesperson, and we used to sell hair analysis. We still kind of do. We have a store down in Windsor. It offers hair analysis, but I was there in person and I would sell them in person. But me as a salesperson, I would rather sell you nutrition than hair analysis. So if there's a choice, this means if there's a budget, my choice would be to get the nutrients and just dive in, right? Because the hair analysis, no matter what, no matter who you are, is going to tell you that you have a list of deficiencies. And we don't want you to go in and say, okay, I need more vitamin C, I need more manganese, I need more zinc. We just give you the 90 essential nutrients. The hair analysis can be useful if you see one thing that's just crazy low, and it'll probably match up with the symptoms that they told us about during the interview process. Then that's great. We can boost that one nutrient. We can boost those 3 nutrients. But it's not that useful otherwise, because we're still going to give you the same essential recommendation. And usually when you just give people the basics, like when you just give people a spread of nutrients, they usually just feel better, right? So you usually don't need to go into the specifics. Like earlier we were talking about there's specific products that could be used for the thyroid. I don't like using them first, right? I like using a package of products first, focusing on digestion first, because usually that's enough. If there's still, not maximum recovery or something like that, now we're gonna go fishing for other things that could be getting in the way, or other things that could more specifically target that problem, especially herbal products that could help speed up. We don't even know how a lot of these things work, right? We don't know how a lot of the actual active mechanism in a lot of these herbs. So we don't really know why, but we know that they help with a lot of specific problems. So no, for beginners, I wouldn't necessarily get a hair analysis. I would get a hair analysis if you have the money to do so, if you're super serious, either about prevention or about figuring out what's actually contributing to your problem, because you can see other interesting things on the hair analysis, right? You can see, again, toxic metal loads, you can see parasites, yeast, fungus, mold, worms, bacteria, virus, right? It can give you food sensitivities. In my experience, it's not that accurate hair analysis. Like it'll spit out a list of foods that you should avoid, and I don't find that much value in that list. I would rather get a blood test for food allergies, but it does give you a ton of information either way. And it'll also tell you which specific, some of them. Now, tests are different. You can get a live hair analysis, or you can get a static hair analysis. I prefer the live hair analysis, which is one that's done in person. You go in, take a little piece of your hair out, they use the little white part at the end, and they measure that, and it happens in real time, and you get your report within like 30 minutes. And the other ones, you send them out and they run analysis on it. Some of them in an actual wet lab, and they're actually using reagents and they're running it through a machine physically. I like the hair analysis again because it's automated. It's a machine that does it for you. And when it's live, I do feel that it actually retains a little bit more information and possibly more accurate information, but I'm not 100% up to date on that, because either way, all hair analysis will give you a good spectrum of information that you can use. So just again, do you want to pay for it, or do you need to pay for it? Not really, right? And there's a bunch of tests, by the way, that could help us, pinpoint a blood sugar problem or an infection or something like that. But we don't really often, if ever, recommend that people go get tests, because you usually don't need them, right? We don't need more information. We know that your body's not doing well. We know that there's rampant deficiencies in the population. We know that there's rampant infections in the population with parasites, especially some pernicious ones like Candida. We know these things. I could just assume that you have a blood sugar problem, assume that you have a digestive problem, tell you to act like a celiac whether you are or not. I don't care if you have a test that shows you're a celiac. If you act like a celiac, you're going to do better. If you act on your digestion and your blood sugar, and you eat in ways that promote healthy blood sugar, you're going to have a benefit regardless of what the blood test tells you or what the hair analysis tells you, right? If you take all the nutrients and you absorb them, you're going to feel better regardless of what the hair analysis said. And also, even with the live hair analysis, I don't believe that it's calibrated anywhere near towards what we actually need. And remember, it's always going to have to factor in some kind of average, right? Whatever system they're using, and the system that we use is really good, right? It's from Germany. I think it works great. It gives us lots of information. But their nutrient values, they're not going to be calibrated necessarily on the FDA's RDA recommended daily allowance, but they're probably going to be too low, generally, right? And again, what are they basing this on? The height and the weight of each human, it's very hard to factor this in, what each human actually needs on a nutrient level. So to come up with a recommended daily allowance, we have to do it on some kind of average person, right? And as you know, there is really not much such thing as an average person, right? What is an average 24-year-old male compared to an average 38-year-old woman? These are hugely different humans, right? And this is one of the reasons, by the way, why I personally don't agree with the whole fluoride thing or anything of that nature, where it gives a standard dose to the whole population, because the infant is going to be getting a much higher dose per body weight than the adult, right? Especially the overweight adult. They can tolerate quite a lot of whatever the toxin is, whereas it affects the younger, the smaller, the weaker, the older much more, right? So that's just to say that every hair analysis is going to be based on some kind of recommended daily allowance for these things, and I don't trust those companies or anything. I don't trust anyone other than Dr. Wallach to actually, really know the dose, really give the solid dose, and often it's way higher than what the FDA says, right? Way higher. Like one of our main products has 16,000% of the B12 that the FDA says we need, and that might not be enough for you on today, right? You might have a super active day. That might not be anywhere near enough for you. Just keep that in mind. If a hair analysis comes out and says, hey, you're good in these levels, I don't trust them to know what the levels are. I don't trust them to know how much manganese I need, selenium I need. Hey man, what's your favorite natural electrolytes? Like for a homemade Gatorade? Just salt, guys. Salt. Salt is the electrolyte. Now I'm gonna go in and say, despite my lack of experience using celery juice, it is said to be a phenomenal electrolyte source as well. So you can definitely try that out yourself as well. I was recommended to get the 90 essential nutrients and psyllium husk. Do you just sell psyllium on its own? We do not sell psyllium husk. You can buy psyllium husk from a grocery store. You can buy it from a bulk food store. It's a good way to get it. And you just take a ton of it. Just like diatomaceous earth, psyllium husk works very similar to diatomaceous earth in its mechanism. So this is so HIV doesn't evolve into full-blown AIDS. Well, one of the most important components there is going to be, guys, obviously avoiding the bad foods and eating the right foods and whatever, but also specific nutrient deficiency. Selenium has a ton to do with this, because it has a ton to do with antioxidants. It has a ton to do with our immune system. Selenium is what allows our body to actually utilize glutathione, which is the master antioxidant. It's produced in the body. It's produced in every cell in the body, and without selenium, our bodies can only use glutathione to a very limited degree, meaning it can really only go and neutralize like one free radical, for instance, whereas in the presence of selenium, and selenium has many cofactors as well, but in the presence of selenium, the glutathione can go on and do a much more effective job at cleaning up free radicals, neutralizing free radicals, and getting them ready for disposal in the body. It's kind of a magic little process there. So for somebody who has HIV, my opinion would be just to strengthen the immune system as much as possible. It's all the things we talk about, getting rid of the bad foods, making sure the digestion is clear. I would go in and work on circulation itself, right? It's not just exercise, it's not just blood movement, but circulation of the lymph. And there's some specific things that can really help with that. Like a swing set or a trampoline are the two, I think, most effective free things that you can do. Massage can target the lymphatic system, so lymphatic massage. As well as some machines, there's shaker machine. These machines can be quite effective. They can also be quite expensive depending on your market, but just a machine that you stand on and it just shakes you. And we found phenomenal results with this, with circulation. And by the way, one of the ways that we measure circulation when we have the equipment to do it, it's kind of primitive. It's not like you put them in an MRI and it tells you they've got a circulation problem here and here, and we use a chi machine, which is basically a machine that you just stick your legs into. You stick two little feet holders and it just moves back and forth. Feet's in here, you're laying down on a table, it moves back and forth in a steady rhythm, and we keep somebody on that for 10-20 minutes or so. And when you turn it off, there's a wave that comes across, like if you're healthy, if your circulation is good, the wave comes from your feet all the way to your head, all the way back down to your feet, and then usually back up. It's kind of like when you get off a boat, you've been on a boat all day and you're all wonky. Well, when the chi machine stops, and most people, by the way, we put a civilian on the chi machine, they're sitting there, you can see the look on their face like, what the heck am I doing here? But when it stops, you get this wave. Now, if they've come to us with a serious health problem, especially the diabetes, there's huge circulation problems involved in blood sugar problems, often and they're overweight, often these people, the wave only comes up to their knee, right? Or the wave only comes up to their waist, and we ask them, right? So we make them continue to lay down on the table for a minute or two after the chi machine is stopped moving. And by the way, you can get a chi machine for like $40 on Amazon, right? So this can actually be a really effective tool that you can have in your house for your own circulation, and if you want to measure somebody's circulation. If that wave only goes up to their knee, they have terrible circulation. We've had people who say, I just feel my feet buzzing. That means there's a circulation problem in the whole body, right? Some people don't feel anything at all after it, and then after you deal with them a while and you clean up their digestion, you get the nutrients into them, and you get them on one of these machines regularly, or get them onto some sort of circulation discipline regularly, then you can put them back on the chi machine. You can now, next week the wave comes up to their knee, and then the next week it comes up to their chest, and then eventually they get it all the way to their head, and that means you have healthy circulation. So that's a cheap and easy way to do that. I'm saying this because all these really serious problems, you know, like somebody who is showing symptoms of AIDS, cancer, right, or, you know, whatever, you name it, a serious problem. It's going to be digestive, it's going to be circulation, it's going to be nutrient deficiencies, and it's probably going to be bad foods and or toxicity. All four of these things are probably going to be involved. There's other things that could be involved as well. Sleep could be involved, bad sleep, stress could be involved, right? A list of things that could be involved. Environmental things, radiation, right, could be impacting the blood, affects how the blood moves around. You cannot be a healthy person if you do not have healthy blood. It's one of the things that can affect the blood. So we would take all the nutrients, avoid all the bad foods, increase the antioxidants, especially increase the antioxidants, and I would especially increase the selenium, if that was me. And it shouldn't be something you need to do forever, right? When anybody comes to us with any problem, even if it's something like a virus or HIV, whatever, they said that you're gonna have it forever, then my opinion is usually when you just strengthen the immune system and keep it that way, these symptoms don't reappear. This also goes for things like herpes, right? Well over half the adult population in the Western world carries the herpes antibodies, and very few of them show any symptoms of it, right? Just getting the body to a basic level of health, you shouldn't actually have to deal with the symptoms of these problems, and it's hard to even call them problems at that point, because really all there is antibodies in the blood. And we carry all kinds of antibodies in the blood, and it doesn't mean that we're actually sick, you know. And by the way, antibodies, with a lot of these autoimmune problems, like they use antibodies as a measure to determine whether you have a problem, yet there's not one disease that has 100% correlation between antibodies appearing in the blood and the person actually having the problem, right? Rheumatoid arthritis is a great example of that. The different antibodies that they measure, I think the highest one is that 80% of people who they say have rheumatoid arthritis have this antibody. What about the other 20%, right? It can't be a causative relationship if it doesn't appear in 100% of the people. So, any idea why tuna gives me horrible heartburn? Not enough salt, probably chronically. Possibly not enough calcium. We talked about that earlier in the live. We are going to save this live so you can rewatch that. Can you correct mental illness with the vitamins and minerals? Also, what advice do you have for people who are constantly struggling with depression? And if it does help, how does it help? Well, a lot of the mental problems will have to do with our emotional flare-ups, right? There's a lot of mental aspects to this, right? What is your emotional reaction to a situation, all that kind of stuff that has to do with your priming up here. But blood sugar is going to have a ton to do with it, right? There's a lot of people who don't even notice it, but they get extremely irritable when they're hungry, for instance. Low blood sugar, right? The fluctuations in blood sugar will be causing fluctuations in mood. So if you can stabilize blood sugar, you can stabilize a lot of the most extreme problems involved in mental illness. And we're talking like schizophrenia here. We're talking about, people just do crazy things. This is often a direct result of a blood sugar spike. Right? Dr. Wallach says it's like a drunk. You can have a good drunk who just has a couple of drinks and goes to sleep, and you can have a bad drunk who has a couple of drinks and starts punching holes in the wall. Right? Neither of those are really good, though. Right? Going to being on the low blood sugar, and I believe that's much closer to depression, and being on the high blood sugar, and that's much closer to anxiety. Depression and anxiety usually go together, and I do believe it has a ton to do with blood sugar. Also gonna have a ton to do with some trace minerals, especially lithium. Right? Lithium's not just a drug, it's based on a mineral. And Dr. Wallach has a strong case to make that one mineral has has a ridiculous impact on human behavior. Again, especially in the most extreme ends. We're talking serial killers. You know, we're talking about people who harm other people. The lithium deficiency could have a ton to do with that. There's other minerals involved as well, especially the calcium family. Calcium and its cofactors. It's not just involved in bones, but also muscles. Remember from earlier, muscles are what push blood around and all these things. I mean, there's so many ways that the body can fail by not having these certain things. And if your pumps aren't working properly, your body's not going to be working properly. This contributes not only to physical ailments, which depress us, you know, but it also slows us down to the things that we actually need to do, right? Say you love golfing, you can't golf because you got arthritis, right? That's going to actually affect your mental health. It affects the way that you live your life. So it is much easier to navigate basically everything when you are healthy, when you got your blood sugar under control and all that kind of stuff. And you can still have depression. You can still not be happy with the way things are in life. The only real response that I know of that does anything at all is action, right? That seems to be the only consistent response that really actually targets the problem, action. And part of this is just distracting you. It's distracting you from thinking about that thing, but getting out of that mental spiral is extremely important, right? Like, you stay in depression if you focus on depression. So just action itself, you know, can at least pull your brain out of that, right? Right now I'm focused on doing this. How am I going to be depressed? I don't even have time to think about it. I got to talk, right? So doing active work, exercise is said to help quite a lot. I believe it does help quite a lot. Obviously, social connections, I think, are extremely, extremely important, especially when somebody's depressed. They usually cut themselves off from those social connections. So either reestablishing or establishing them, going out and doing something social. And this is stuff that people don't usually want to do when they're depressed, right? They usually don't want to actually do the things that would help to get them out of it. But when you add all this up and you have a healthy body, right, and you got all by the way, that blood sugar problem has a lot to do with nutrients, right? Specific nutrients, specific minerals, specific cofactors. So you give your body the 90 essential nutrients. You don't put garbage into it, right? Remember, garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. If you're making your body, if you're eating Doritos and Pepsi, your body is attempting to rebuild and regenerate its cells out of Doritos and Pepsi, right? So what kind of body is that going to be? What kind of brain is that going to be, right? Is that going to be a brain that's more susceptible to depression, anxiety? I think so, right? I do think so. So can you correct mental illness completely with nutrition? No, I don't believe so. Because this is an interactive process, right? Your thought processes feed your emotions, right? If you're thinking negative things and you're focusing on all the bad stuff that happened to you and how you're a victim and how could this person do this to me, and you know that's going to keep you down, right? So breaking that cycle, it's imperative as well. You can't just stabilize the blood sugar, and if you don't and not correct, you know, the diseases of attitude, the fundamental problem is not going to go away. It's going to be the same with addiction as well, right? You have to break that cycle mentally. You have to actually participate in that process. And you have to want to change. Like they kind of always say, right? If somebody wants to be a victim, you can't really help them out of it. They have to get themselves out of it. How do you correct hyperhidrosis? An annoying issue that I've gotten no real solution for from doctors. They put brackets, shocker. In my opinion, the real thing to do is salt, right? Salt has a ton to do with the way that the body hydrates itself. Now, I kind of stuttered there because there could be something more important. It could be structured water. It could be more important. It could be that your cells aren't actually underfunctioning at the fundamental level and they're not accepting water through the cells properly. And structured water can hydrate the cells, can hydrate the body at a level that we can't even really describe. Science doesn't really describe it. We're talking metaphysics now, basically, right? Because to science, water is water, and to us, it's not. Right? And not only is it salt water, right? Salt and water are needed for proper hydration, but adding structured water into your program or into your life without nutrition, structured water can work on its own, can actually help your body rehydrate itself at the cellular level. Chances are that has a lot to do with it. By the way, I haven't liked talking about this much because it makes the whole process very difficult. We're already recommending quite a lot of stuff. We're recommending stopping most people's favorite foods, right? The glutens and the oils and whatever, processed meats, well done red meat. We're telling you to stop these things and buy all this other stuff, these supplements, you know, buy all this stuff, do a liver detox, wear a frequency tuning disc bracelet. Like, we're already recommending a lot. And now we got to come in and talk about how in the city or even in the country, if you're holding a phone, you got a Wi-Fi near you, you got high voltage power lines near you or a cell phone tower near you, doesn't matter where you are, but more likely in the city, you're having way more exposure to radiation. This is causing the body to underfunction at many different levels. One of them is actually the bottom level of the cell. Parts of my body go numb / fall asleep quickly if I'm sitting or laying down. How can I help that? Well, all the things that we're talking about here, especially digestion, right? If there's a digestive problem, it usually leads directly to a circulation problem. This is essentially a circulation problem. I would say the next most important thing is blood sugar, right? We see this a lot usually with low blood sugar, where they get cold very easily, or they have the cold extremities or the numb extremities, you know. So I would go in, I would use enough salt, first of all, cut out the gluten, second of all, take all the 90 essential nutrients, third of all. The only specific mineral to call out here would be the chromium involved in blood sugar. And we don't normally name specific nutrients. Dr. Wallach doesn't like naming specific nutrients because he doesn't want you to run out and buy chromium, right? Chromium has at least 23 cofactors, direct cofactors, and one of them, vanadium, is actually extremely important in this mechanism as well. And that's why our specific blood sugar support product is going to have both chromium and vanadium in it, and a handful of herbs that we already know, the wider world knows, helps with blood sugar. And often, by the way, just correcting the digestion in general, like if this person's overweight, that means they have a digestive problem by default. That means they basically have a blood sugar problem by default as well. So often, just by correcting the digestion, especially with increasing the salt, getting rid of the gluten, you know, you're going to see a result on your actual numbness or coldness or anything like that. And by the way, we've seen skinny people come in with this, regular people come in with this, and extremely overweight people come in with this. So it's a lot of people say it has to do with body weight, like, oh, it's just because you're so skinny, that's why you get cold so often. But there's big people that have it too. A big person is going to be more likely to have high blood sugar, and that means they're actually going to run warm instead of running cold. But there's still, like, in my opinion, they're just as likely to have these problems because people of all weights come to us with these problems. And you can have a blood sugar problem whether you're big or small or skinny or fat. Is creatine bad? No, I don't think creatine is bad. A lot of creatine products are bad because they're impure or they have crappy ingredients in them, right? When things are sold in the weightlifting category of the health food store, they're usually not that good. You usually look at the ingredients and they're not that good. If I was going to take creatine, I would take pure creatine, and that's it. And I would look into the brand and make sure that their practices are good and clean and solid. We don't like to sell our products based on bashing other products, but there's a ton of things out there of products being tested, especially just in general health food stores, retail health food stores, especially where a lot of people buy their protein and their creatine and their pre-workout and whatever, and they're tested and they don't actually have the nutrient levels that they're said to have in it, the active ingredient that they're said to have in it, and have a bunch of contaminants in it. And I'm not saying that's the whole industry, I'm just saying that it's a problem in the industry, so you do have to be aware of your sources, and to my knowledge, we don't sell a creatine, so I would have to tell you to go elsewhere. But if it were me, by the way, creatine wouldn't be my go-to. I would take the 90 essential nutrients first and foremost. If I was weightlifting, you know, I would increase the protein with a quality protein shake with actually that has more minerals in it and more other nutrients in it, not just the protein. Especially bone soup, I would go for these other compounds: bones, bone soup, cartilage, eggs. Like these are far more important to me than creatine itself. There's also this other product here I've been taking a while now. It's called HGH Youth Complex, and it has the precursor amino acids for the HGH, human growth hormone, that your body makes in its own cells, right? So it gives your body the raw materials to make the HGH, which you would need, you know, to repair and build muscle. What minerals, nutrient deficiencies are linked to arthritis? That one's easy. It's the calcium family. Calcium and its cofactors. Some vitamins involved as well, but we're talking about calcium, magnesium, boron, strontium, zinc. There's a list of them, and they need to be in a specific ratio, right? And we spoke a little bit earlier about phosphorus contributing, like increased phosphorus intake leading to increased calcium need, because you need 2 parts calcium, 1 part phosphorus. And if you're eating food that has, say, 1 part calcium, 18 parts phosphorus, well, now you need it. Now you can do that math, and 36. You need 36 times more calcium to compensate for that, right? That doesn't mean total dose. That means dose relative to the food that you've eaten. Phosphorus shows up particularly in colas, right? So we say colas are the worst of the carbonated drinks. You don't want to drink carbonated drinks in general, but colas increase your phosphorus a lot because of the phosphoric acid in it. It's part of what makes it cola. Also meats, right? There is truth to the vegan campaign against meats, right? Meats can contribute to health problems because when you eat meat, you have to eat the other nutrients as well, and you won't have a health problem. But when you eat meat, especially when you eat organ meat, the phosphorus ratio is very high. There's lots of phosphorus in it, so it greatly increases your need for calcium as well. This can contribute to the arthritis, to the osteoporosis, to the gingivitis, to the insomnia, to the blood pressure problems. All these problems that have to do with this family of nutrients, which is calcium and its cofactors. By the way, vitamin C is also one of the most important cofactors for calcium. And they can get really complicated when we start talking about this, right? This is why we rely on products where they're already formulated in their proper ratios based on Dr. Wallach and his research and with animals and humans, and because you shouldn't need to worry about all this stuff, right? Because if you are trying to tailor your own dose, I mean, you're going to get blown away by how complicated it can get. Again, for instance, the vitamin C being a direct cofactor to the calcium family here, especially also in joint formation and inflammation. Remember, arthritis is defined as inflammation of the joints, so this is going to have a lot to do with the connective tissue, right? Vitamin C for connective tissue, basically, as Ben Fuchs puts it, is extremely important in allowing the body to get the raw materials to the joints, right? It's a cofactor. And those raw materials are not just the calcium family, it's also the connective tissue itself, which has a lot to do with sulfur components, right? Sulfur itself is an essential mineral, but it shows up in a lot of these things like glucosamine sulfate, right? Chondroitin sulfate, MSM. These are all sulfur compounds that are all promoted as supporting the health of the joints. These things all go together. You need the minerals, you need the connective tissue, you need the vitamins to go into that as well. Of course, obviously the rest of the 90 essential nutrients are going to matter, because if they're messing with some other part of the body, now the body's focused on that, and you need more nutrients to deal with that problem, and increases deficiencies elsewhere and leads to other problems as well. Quit taking prescription medication this is a comment, it's not me saying it. Quit taking a prescription medication for pain a year and a half ago. Any way to help regular dopamine besides the 90? I wouldn't do anything specific for dopamine other than take the 90, avoid the bad foods. You know, I would increase the eggs quite a lot, because eggs have a lot to do with your hormones. Your hormones are made of cholesterol, right? Sex hormones are made of cholesterol, and all this has to do with mood, right? So it's not necessarily dopamine itself. I think dopamine is a product, you know, of how the body, mind, and soul is functioning. So I would just focus on supporting the body as much as possible, doing all the things that we talk about, nothing specific. You could detox from the medication as well, right? There's going to be, everybody needs a detox anyways, but if you were on drugs for a while, it doesn't really matter which pharmaceutical drug, you're going to have definitely an increased need for detox. What do you suggest for really dry skin, mostly legs? I take vitamins and I eat relatively healthy. So we had this question earlier, and we had these kind of statements earlier too, and taking vitamins doesn't mean that much to us. Don't know which type you're taking, don't know which doses, don't know which companies, and either way, you only need 16 vitamins, right, out of the 90 essential nutrients. There's a lot left over, and only a few vitamins are directly involved with the health of the skin, especially the fat-soluble vitamins D, E, A, and K. But it's going to be more important the good fats, right? So when someone says, I eat relatively healthy, no idea what that means, because we're not sharing criteria here for this, right? We're going to tell you to avoid the inflammatory foods, especially the glutens, wheat, barley, rye, and oats. I put quinoa on that list as well, and I would research, everybody should do this, everybody should research what a celiac can and cannot eat, and pretend you're a celiac and eat that way. And that will prevent a lot of inflammation in the intestine, so that you can absorb those good fats that are involved in the skin. You need a bunch of those good fats to have healthy skin. If you do that, chances are alone, your skin will not be dry. Be careful with the type of salt you consume. That's true. We often get asked though, they say, well, if you don't have another option, would you use table salt? And my answer is yes. I do carry a salt shaker with me. If I do forget it, I'm going to use table salt, because you still need salt to digest the food that you're eating, regardless, right? So even if it's just simple sodium chloride table salt, sure, there's going to be something to say about its toxicity and about its inferiority to the other natural salts, but if I don't have natural salt, I have to use table salt. Now, I personally wish table salt just didn't exist. It doesn't need to exist. There's enough salt in this world. We don't need to process it down and bleach it and add iodine to it, in my opinion, right? But it is what it is. You go into a restaurant, there's only table salt on the table, you've got to use that table salt, or you're going to be contributing to possible digestive distress, right? It's not likely that the food is going to be cooked with enough salt, especially since everybody thinks salt's bad for us. Restaurants, especially conscientious restaurants, think they're doing us a favor by limiting the salt in the food, right? They think they're doing us a favor by not having butter in the kitchen and having margarine instead. They don't know better, right? So it just is up to you. You have to know that most of the food that you're eating is going to be cooked with table salt anyways. Even if the restaurant puts out sea salt for you, they cook their food with table salt. Even if they give you a glass of filtered water, especially because you asked for it, you wouldn't believe how many times you ask them, they put a glass of water on the table, and you say, is this tap water or filtered? And they say, oh, it's tap water. I say, do you have filtered water? And they say, yes. So they had filtered water, and they served you tap water anyways. But often they do serve you filtered water, but then they make your soups and they make your food with tap water, right? So you have to be aware of this. It makes it seem like, we can't eat anywhere safely, and it's just so overwhelming. But just being aware means I don't really order soup from restaurants, right? They don't usually make it with filtered water. You have to be very clear about what you want to put in your body and find that stuff, right? So if you're serious about salt, like I'm serious about salt, carry your own salt shaker. Thoughts on eating just raw fruit for healing? It'll give you short-term benefits for sure, especially if it's organic. If you're eating only fruits, guess what you're not eating? You're not eating Doritos, right? You're not eating potentially bad dairy products. You're not eating processed carbs. You're not eating most of the bad foods if you're only eating fruits. Fruits are very easy to digest, right? It's going to have a huge benefit on you. It's also going to have a huge benefit on you just to not eat any food at all, just to fast, right? So it's not necessarily the fruits that are doing the healing. It is getting away from the bad foods that's doing most of the healing, right? If you concentrate those fruits down into juices, you're going to concentrate whatever nutrients are in them. Remember that plants can make vitamins, amino acids, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, but they can't make minerals, right? So when a food is advertised as having this mineral in it or whatever, we don't count on it to be in there, right? So you're not going to get everything you need from food no matter what you eat. But if you do just eat fruits, especially in the short term, you're probably going to experience benefit. But guess what? You probably experience benefit going pure carnivore as well, right? Or going pure vegan as well. There's a ton of examples, especially now. There's a big camp of people who left veganism and went to carnivorism, and they were eating the standard American diet, most of them. They moved to veganism, and they feel better. Again, they're not on the Doritos or whatever. They feel better. They're eating real food for the most part. Then they start to degenerate because there's certain things missing from that diet, and there's certain things missing from all diets. That's why we promote the 90 essential nutrients separately from the food message itself. They experienced the benefit for a while, and then they started to get worse. And they switch over to carnivore. Now they experience a whole different set of benefits, right? They say, I feel so much better. I was such an idiot doing that, and da-da. But they're going to get new problems, right? Especially we talked about earlier, eating a bunch of meat, eating a bunch of organs. If that's not balanced with increased mineral intake, it's going to cause mineral deficiencies. This is why it's actually optimal to eat the whole animal, right? When you eat the whole animal, we were talking about that calcium to phosphorus ratio, 2 calcium, 1 phosphorus. Eating the entire animal is a 2-to-1 ratio. It's how it's supposed to be. It's how we're supposed to eat animals. So there's a lot of these carnivores that are just making that mistake and focusing too much on certain parts of the animals, like the muscle or the eggs, right? Whereas it's the spine and the organs and all the connective tissue, the bones, right? Grind up the bones and eat them, or leach nutrients out of them some way to get actually the proportion of nutrients that we need. And that is what we would do in the wild. We would eat the entire animal in the wild. Someone said Steve Jobs only ate fruit for 2 years. He's dead now. That is the truth. Fasting makes the body get rid of the bad stuff in your body and leaves the good nutrients to let the good nutrients in your body function properly. Your view on that? Fasting is quite complicated. Its benefits are numerous, right? And a lot of them are immeasurable, actually. A lot of them are spiritual as well. And this matters because your mental does work with your body to create your actual wellness, your well-being. So fasting has remarkable benefits across the board. It's practiced by all the longest lived populations. So there's a lot to say on it, but also there's not that much to say on it, because if you just do it, it will aid in your healing and it will aid in your longevity. All the longest lived populations practice calorie restriction, usually not by choice, usually because they're poor. So calorie restriction is aided by fasting.